Well, Amadeus, I don't know. It was a nice weekend. It was some very interesting games starting all the way back on Friday night, and it was there were some epic games over the weekend. I gotta say, wasn't a lot of them, but there was definitely some interesting games.
Yeah, definitely some very good games. You know, we said the Washington Oregon was probably the marquee
Hmm.
matchup of the weekend, and that one lived up to the expectation. Um,
Yeah.
we also said Notre Dame was going to throttle USC. That was another good game.
Hmm.
If you enjoy watching USC lose, you know, as
It
you
was,
mentioned in the pre-show, Caleb Williams had a terrible game, but I guess that's just what happens when he goes up against a real defense.
yeah. Um, it's we'll finish the Caleb here in a sec, but it all got underway actually Friday night when, and we mentioned this on the show that um, Stanford was taking on Colorado, and that Colorado, was playing well and could have, they could have clinched a spot in a bowl with a win on Friday night. We did not know that halfway through the game, when at halftime it was 29-0 Colorado, that Stanford would actually find the quarterback that they had been looking for, um, and they literally put up 40, plus points in the second half. In one half, they put up 40 points on Colorado's defense, and it was an epic game. It was a fun game to watch. I know that most people, because they're wiser than I, chose to go to bed and not watch it because at halftime it's 29-0. So why would you? But when it finished around 2:30 in the morning on Sunday morning, uh, you know, I was just happy I saw it. Now, if you ask me if would I do it again, probably not. But anyway, it was interesting. It was fun to watch. Um, the offense of Colorado was spot on, but the defense was exposed and proved to be. It's going to be problematic for them. I still think they're going to get that six or even seven wins, but it's not going to be simple. That's for darn sure.
Yeah, I don't know about that, Jim. That was a huge loss for them
Mm-hmm.
against Stanford. Not only because it solidifies the fact that they're a bad team, really.
Right.
You know, the Stanford is one of the worst teams in the Pac-12. They
Right.
blew 29-0 lead. The offense may be very good on Colorado, but the defense is not, as we've seen week after
Yeah.
week, and that's part of the reason why this isn't really
Mm-hmm.
a good team. And that loss had huge implications for them
It did.
because, as you said, they were going to be closer to a bowl game. Now, if you look at their remaining schedule, they have to go through the gauntlet. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, I think they're lucky if they even finish 5-7 now.
Oh, okay. Well, it's certainly possible. I think you're right. They have they'll score points, but it's going to be difficult to figure out what happens. Um, Oregon, Washington, like you said, lived up to it. Got to give credit to both quarterbacks. They were both as good as advertised. The coaching lacked, in my mind. Dan Lanning, who's a good coach, no question about that. But he felt compelled, for reasons that I'm not totally sure why, to go constantly on fourth down and they went for fourth down five times. If he simply just did kick the field goal twice, they could have ended up winning that game. So, at the end of the day, Washington was the better team. They played the game. Oregon wasn't that far behind, but some questionable coaching didn't help.
Yeah, definitely some interesting decisions there, but I still think Washington was the better team in
Yeah.
that game. They just definitely deserved to win that
Mm-hmm.
game. And I think, you know, a big part of the reason why he was going so much for it on fourth down, especially that last play.
Mm-hmm.
I know he's taken a lot of crap for that
Mm-hmm.
last play before
Sure.
Washington scored the touchdown to go ahead.
Right.
But you could make the argument that if they punt the ball away, it doesn't really matter
Mm-hmm.
much because Washington still has 2 minutes on the clock, and
Right.
they got the ball at midfield, but it only took them 2 plays to go 60 yards and the length of the field to get that touchdown. So if you're Dan Lanning and you have a chance to convert the 4th and 1 and finish the game,
Mm-hmm.
lead and the ball in your hands, it's not really a terrible decision because I kind of see why would you want to give the ball back to that offense with that much time, especially even if you punt the ball. That's they went 60 yards in 2 plays. That's just
Right.
a play to get to midfield. That all it takes them is one
Sure.
extra play.
It's crazy. Now we're gonna get to Notre Dame and USC in just a sec, but this one I know probably I was the only one to watch it. It was FAU in South Florida. Now they were not rivals. Let me get this totally straight. They were not rivals. They are going to become rivals, and why? Okay. Um, USF's defense in the second half was non-existent, but FAU, for reasons known only to themselves, got two guys thrown out for targeting. This was the quarterback for Byron Brown. The quarterback for South Florida got three roughing calls on him and two guys who got thrown out of the game for targeting. So that's 5 times that he got hit after he threw the ball. That's going to not only leave a sting, but it was Alex Golish, who's the head coach, mentioned it very frequently at the end of in his press conference. But the one thing he really mentioned was they were up 56-14 FAU, and they converted an onside kick where they ended up with the ball again. And so Golish goes, look, he goes, I get it. I understand. He goes, you have the right to go and play as hard as you want to. He goes, the onside kick, though, he said, that's going to stick with me. And he says, okay, they may get us today. They may get us tomorrow. They may get us 3 or 4 years in a row. I don't know. He says, but before I leave here, there will be payback. He goes, I'm not going to hurt anybody on their team, and I don't want anybody to get hurt on their team. But I'm damn sure not going to lose to these guys and have my nose, rubbed in it. So if they're looking to be a rival, he goes, I'm circling the game right now for next year on my calendar. He goes, again, will we beat them? I have no idea. But he says, I'm damn sure not going to let that happen again. So we got some beef here, which is good. Beef is always good. As long as no one gets hurt, I'm good with that. But it was a wild game. Anyway, on to SC and Notre Dame. Going into the SC game, and you were spot on there. The interesting part was SC wasn't scoring points. The actual defense of SC was holding them in games. And if you look at the scoreboard, which we do, they didn't do badly on a defensive standpoint against Notre Dame. It was the offense that for 3 weeks in a row has not been able to find each other. And you're talking about, Caleb Williams, who he threw 3 picks, right? And he's the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. So if anything, his stock is plummeting at this point in time.
Yeah, well, he won the Heisman. They didn't really play. They didn't really play that many strong teams last
Mm-hmm.
year, and this year is really when we're gonna see this USC team tested. Obviously, they got
Mm-hmm.
their first test in South Bend
Right.
on Saturday, but they still have some tougher matchups. I believe they have to play Washington and Oregon before the end of the season. So
They
I don't.
play Utah this week.
Yeah, so that's going to be these are all going to be tough
Mm-hmm.
things. And actually, I think their schedule just gets tougher
Mm-hmm.
towards the end of the season. So
Yep.
yeah, we're gonna find out a lot about this USC team for sure, and how good Caleb Williams really is.
Well, to your point, the remaining schedule for SC, they play at this juncture 5 teams in the top 25. Now, that may not be the case, in 2 weeks now, from 1 week from now. We don't know, but they finish the season with ranked teams. They don't play a team that isn't ranked in that final grouping. So that's going to be an interesting gauntlet, as you say, to go through, because it's not going to be fun. That's for darn sure.
Yeah, definitely. They're going to have a tough end to the schedule.
Absolutely. Now, uh, just one small bit of business here from. I'm speaking for me, but I think Amadeus is going to chime in. The 7 people, and I don't know who they are. I don't need to know, who voted for Ohio State for the top spot in college football. Those writers, you either went to the university or, you know, or you wanted to. You cannot tell me that Ohio State is better than Washington, Oregon, hell, even Georgia. I just, I don't get it. You got your right to do whatever you want to do. They're not even the best team in the conference. Okay, Michigan's better. Penn State probably is better. So you'll get your comeuppance, but 7 people vote for no for them to be number one in the college football poll. I'm sorry, I have no respect for those 7 so-called football expert journalists that they put up there. No, don't give it to me. Doesn't
Yeah,
work.
this is why the rankings are a bit of a joke. And you know what? That the only reason Ohio State should ever be ranked number one coming into this week is as a pity vote because they're going to lose to Penn State this week, so they won't get to have that number one spot for the rest of the season.
Right. I mean, thank goodness they didn't get it, but they got number 3, and I'm not sure they could beat even FSU now, because FSU's got back the mojo. They're just beating people now, and they're beating them for style points. So you know it is what it is. But come on, guys, it's they're not that good. They're not one of the top 8 teams in my particular opinion in the country. But you do you, whatever you need to do. All right. So, any other games over the weekend that I'm sorry, in the college ranks that you want to touch on before we move on, or did we get them all?
No, pretty much we hit all the ones that of interest. Georgia struggled with
Mm-hmm.
Vanderbilt. That's your false number one team in the country
Right.
that we keep preaching on.
Right.
Michigan continues to dominate. Maybe they do deserve that number two spot
Yeah.
at this point. I think they've come out since the conference schedule started
Mm-hmm.
and proved themselves. Alabama, they got a close win against Arkansas, so we'll
Mm-hmm.
we'll see what they do in coming weeks. But yeah, pretty
Right.
much the big matchups of the weekend we covered.
Yeah, and I think in the Alabama case, it's a matter of they won. So did they? It doesn't matter if you win by 30 or 3. You still won, and they did, and so do they. They're ranked, I believe, number 11 in the most recent poll. So that's about right. We'll give them that for the moment, and they'll have plenty of opportunity to prove, you know, their worth one way or the other. But it will be an interesting situation to be sure. All right, over on the place where they get paid. Well, of course, they get paid now with NIL money, but they get paid more in the NFL. Uh, we said at the when we started, there's not a lot of games that were that are marquee matchups this weekend. But I don't think I'm again. I can speak for myself. I didn't see the 49ers losing to Cleveland, and I didn't see the Jets beating Philly.
Yeah, those were some interesting ones. I didn't like the 49ers this week just
Hmm.
because I didn't think it was a good matchup for them.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, their offense struggled in that game. But
Right.
I don't know. Watching the last few minutes of that game, it was very apparent they wanted San Francisco to drop that game. There was
Right.
a few questionable flags in there when
Mm-hmm.
the game pretty much would have been over.
Right.
Fourth down. There was a flag that even the commentators were questioning and the good old rules analyst what the
Right.
flag was even for. So yeah, probably not a true loss, but I'm not going to knock the 49ers for that. It was a bad
Mm-mm.
matchup with that Browns defense. I still think they're the best team in the NFL. They'll bounce back from that. The Eagles, I actually that was another game I stayed off, and I wanted to take the
Mm-hmm.
Jets, and sure enough, Zach Wilson pulled through to take down the Eagles. The Eagles were kind of this has been like a long time coming. They have not looked good in
Mm-hmm.
their first few games. A lot of people talking about how they've had dominant wins. They have not looked like a dominant team at all in
No.
their wins. They get out to these early leads, but even then, they get out to these big leads. But a lot of the time, they're trading the touchdowns for field goals. They're getting held
Mm-hmm.
to these field goals, and it's been hurting them. And sure enough, they dropped the game yesterday. So yep, no more undefeated teams in the NFL now.
Going on. Look, about Philly from my standpoint, I'm not questioning talent. It's there. But they've been sloppy, and when you get sloppy, somebody's going to come up and bite you. Now, a fun fact, which I really didn't realize until the folks at Jets were kind enough to point it out, and that was the Jets and the Eagles have played, I believe it's 14 times since the merger. That was the first time the Jets ever beat Philadelphia. I would
Yeah, and
not
it
have
was
bet that. I
Zach
would,
Wilson of all
of all
quarterbacks to do
people, of
it.
all the quarterbacks the Jets have had, Zach Wilson beats the Eagles, or I should say, all the quarterbacks that the Eagles have had, because they've had some pretty bad quarterbacks over the years. But no, the Jets. Again, they don't play them often, but they played them, over the years 15 times or 14 times, and this was the winner for the Jets. So good on you guys for that one. So there you go. Move on. We got one quick back thing, and that is I don't think the Lions are getting the just due they definitely should. Baker Mayfield, owned up to the fact that he threw a couple interceptions that put them in an easy driving situation for touchdowns. But the Bucks defense held, a team that's averaging nearly 40 points a game to 20 points. And, the Detroit Lions defense, which is also a good defense, held the Bucks, without a touch down in that game. So, it's what we thought it would be. It was a good game. It was possibly the marquee game of the weekend, from a standpoint of both teams playing hard, and we finding out that the Lions, they should be in that same breath in the NFC as the 49ers and certainly the Eagles. So, the Lions are there again, and it's pretty interesting stuff from that standpoint. So, good on the Lions, and we'll see how things break from the rest of the season. But good, they played well again in that game against the Buccaneers.
Yeah,
So,
not a great day for our Bucks,
mm-mm,
the official team of our show here,
right.
the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield. But yeah, it's very evident that the Tampa Bay Bucks, if they're going to be in this situation where they're in a weak conference and they have a real
Mm-hmm.
shot of leading or leading the division,
Take it away, yeah.
and winning it, they need a running back. It's very
Mm-hmm.
evident that
Sure.
they need a real running back by the trade deadline. But yeah, to your point, the Detroit Lions are the real deal. Their
Mm-hmm.
offense, their defense, you name it. This is a real team, and Dan Campbell really has their crap together down there for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so that's that. Tonight we get the Cowboys, and the Chargers. Now, what's going to happen at SoFi, and we'll clue you in on this one beforehand. There will probably be 60 to 70% of the fans will be Cowboys fans. Okay, so and for those of you wondering why, for approximately, I want to say 20 years, maybe longer, they established years ago. Jerry Jones bought a bunch of land out in the Oxnard area, which is out in Southern California. For those of you who need a map, it's well within the Los Angeles area, and they've practiced out there. They'll practice there for a couple 3 weeks, and then they'll head back to the Dallas area for the remainder of their schedule. But so they've got Dallas is one of those teams that has a national following regardless, but they actually have a pretty good following in the LA area because people used to go out and watch watch them train, and still do for that matter. So and the Chargers, since they moved from San Diego, have constantly been the other team in their own house since they moved to Los Angeles. So it's not going to be something that's going to surprise them. It's not that they're going to be, the guest in their own home. But it will be interesting, I think, to see a Chargers team, which isn't bad, taking on a Dallas team that got thumped last week, and we'll see if they can bounce back. Your thoughts on tonight's game?
Yeah, I think we finally got a good primetime matchup, Jim. I know a lot of people have been hard on the Cowboys after that awful loss to the 49ers in primetime last week. But we've established that, the 49ers are just a good team. They matched up well against the Cowboys. I expect a much better effort from the Cowboys here with a chance to bounce back from that embarrassing loss. But yeah, a lot of people had this Chargers team to win the Super Bowl at the beginning of the season.
Right.
So finally, we actually get a good matchup. Even though last night's was pretty good as well. If only the Giants could finish off that that last drive to cap off what was a wacky Sunday afternoon already. But 100% after seeing we had a clunker on Thursday, and the Broncos managed to keep that close. They didn't cover in the end because of a late field goal, but 16-8 isn't really, or 19-8, sorry, isn't really is really a screamer to me. And that game last night looked terrible on paper, but obviously Brian Daboll going back to the Bills, he knew how to stop that offense. So that was a much more competitive game. But now we're finally just getting two good teams on the Monday.
Right.
So definitely, this would be a good prime time.
I saw Justin Herbert in an interview that he had done over the weekend, and he basically said, "Look, we need a signature win for people to believe that we're really, that we're there." And he said, "I can't think of a better way to do it than on a Monday night and beating the Cowboys." He said, "If we can pull that off, that would be the signature win that we need for people to take us seriously." So
is that really a signature win, Jim? See, I disagree with that, because if the Chargers beat the Cowboys tonight, you're just going to hear the same thing we heard after the 49ers game. Oh, well, the Cowboys are just crap. Okay?
Well, that's the nature of how it works. I mean, he doesn't get to dictate the narrative. I mean, he wants that to be what's said, but
But that's what I mean. If you want a true signature win for your team, Justin Herbert, go beat the team that's gonna lead the division at the end of the year, Kansas City, because that's the team you see them twice this year, and that's the statement win you need to show you're the real deal. Because beating the Cowboys means nothing if you lose twice to the Chiefs and lose the AFC West. What point did you really prove?
Yeah, you proved that you could beat a team that, as you said, the next day people will be saying, "Oh my God, they're not even close to being as good as we thought they were." So yeah, you're not going to control the narrative, and the best way, as always, to prove that you're the best is to win your division and make the playoffs. So they have that capability. Now they just have to go out and do it. It wouldn't hurt them if you want a little few style points on the resume. It's not going to hurt you to beat Dallas, okay? But it's not going to make or break your season if you don't. You know,
Oh,
it's
I agree. Definitely, like it doesn't hurt to. Obviously, you need to win this
you got to
game.
win out every game you want to play. Sure.
But my point is, this
No,
isn't the signature win you need.
no,
You
you're
if you
right.
want to start talking about signature wins, beat the Chiefs. They're in your division. They
Right.
win it every year. That's the team you need to get through. That's a signature win. Beating the Cowboys is great, but it means nothing because you're not going to see that team again unless you get to the Super Bowl.
Right. And
You
and the
both have.
funny and the funny thing is, on your point, they consistently have trouble talking to Chargers, not just with the Chiefs. They, historically, both Denver and the Raiders have given them grief. So it's not just beating a Dallas team or beating, for that matter, a Chiefs team, which you do have to do, but you have to dominate your division, and that would be a very helpful thing to do for you. I know that Miami did it, yesterday. They had every reason to spit the bit, and they started slow, and it looked like, that they were going to get trapped. But the second half, they cranked up those Maseratis, and away they went. They didn't have any problem with that. But yeah, you're 100% right about, is it a signature win? No, it's just because one side says it is doesn't mean that that's the way it goes. But anyway, onward and upward, Mr. Herbert, and you and the gang go out there and do your best, and we'll remark on it tomorrow whether it was signature-ish or not. Baseball, the MLB, man, the Tigers. I can't believe the Tigers. I mean, they just keep on keeping on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I said the Tigers. I meant the Rangers. What the hell was I thinking?
I figured
Sorry,
you meant
guys.
the Rangers, but yeah, another win last night, and they just continue to roll. Who would have thought? But we also talked about how Houston had a losing record at home during the
They do.
regular season.
Well, here's a number that is amazing and very impressive, frankly. In his last 15 games as managing playoff in the playoffs, Bruce Bochy is 15-0. He has not lost, and that includes 3 trips, to the World Series and wins for the San Francisco Giants. So you gotta give it to Bruce. I mean, there's a statistic, and these are kind of like fly under the radar. They're very geekish, so indulge me for a moment about geekdom. Um, Bochy's starting pitching and relief pitching. Now, forget where we talked about what he's done in October, but you go back to September, and every team that Bochy's had in September has cut 1 point off of their ERA, both in the bullpen and the starting pitching. So that means when everybody else's pitching seems to be getting worse because everybody's tired, for some reason, Bruce Bochy's able to dial it up a little bit and get his starting pitching and his relief pitching to get even better as you were going to the playoffs. And that's incredibly counterintuitive to how it's supposed to work. But, it's a stat that when you put it with everything else that's going on, you got to believe that this is, one of the reasons that Bochy is 15-0 when he goes to the playoffs.
Yeah, well, this is something that you touched on last week too about his managing style and how it just seems to be great for this time of year and the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs. And it's hard to argue when the results are there too. If you look
Mm-hmm.
at this Texas team, they've won all 6 playoff games they've played this year, but their thing during the season was they had a top 5 offense in the league, and
Mm-hmm.
their pitching was terrible. Their bullpen was even blowing games late.
Right.
you look at their 6 playoff wins so far this year. That they've given up 8 runs to the Orioles in just the one game, and they've given up 2 runs or less in the other 5 wins.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, then they just keep coming at you in waves. So that's going to be a fun one. Uh, Tonight, I can tell you that the bank will be rocking as it is always, as the Phillies host the D-backs. And honestly, I don't know what to make of the Diamondbacks. I'm not going to lie to people that I have a clue as to what has been their trick to getting, not only past San Diego and San Francisco, who at mid-season you would have thought one of those two teams would have made it with the Dodgers into the playoffs. But here's this spunky little Arizona team that's amongst the last teams standing. So it you know as I said, it defies anything I know, but that doesn't mean they're not good. It just means that they flew so far under the radar that we discussed them, but I don't think that I fully appreciated the talent that's on that team.
Well, they're definitely a weirder team. If you look, they haven't had good pitching all year.
Right.
They do have, obviously, they have their 2 ace starters in Gallen and Merrill Kelly. But other than
Mm-hmm.
that, their bullpen hasn't been good.
Right.
They did have very good offense. But if you actually look, their offense has been declining over the
Mm-hmm.
second half of the season.
Right.
So, if anything, they've actually been getting worse on the offensive side. Yet,
Mm-hmm.
you look at their first 2 series in the playoffs, they take out the Milwaukee Brewers in a
Mm-hmm.
sweep. And Milwaukee was the team with the best ERA coming into the playoffs. So, they had
Right.
pretty much the best pitching staff of all the playoff teams. And then in their last series, they sweep the Dodgers, who had the best offense in the MLB behind the Atlanta Braves, who
Right.
also got eliminated. So this is they've done it all. They took out the team with best pitching, and they took out one of the teams with the best offense. So very wacky Diamondbacks team for sure, but they're gonna have just as tough a test in this round.
Well, and look who's the twos. All of those amazing pitchers on Atlanta, and the last two men standing who will pitch tonight and then tomorrow is Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. Those would not have been the two pitchers when you looked at the Braves pitching and like you said, Milwaukee's pitching, that you would have thought these will be the last men standing for Philadelphia. They just keep balling, and that's all you can say. I mean, they just keep at it, and then of course you've got Bryce, you've got Trey, you've got guys who they can hit the ball as well. So they are probably the most complete team in the National League, but that doesn't mean that, and we've learned this from from the Dodgers, that the Diamondbacks aren't in any way, shape, or form seemingly afraid of facing the Phillies.
Yep, definitely. So it'll be a good one. That one's game one is tonight. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll have to see. Obviously, Texas already has the 1-0 lead in the other series, so
Yeah.
there'll be some good stuff this week.
Well, and they banged old Verlander out of the game there, knocked him off. A kind of an ironic aside. Both Verlander and Scherzer, who's back now, he's on the list to return for Texas. Their contracts, for the most part, this year are being paid for by the Mets. So de facto, the Mets are in the playoffs with Scherzer and Verlander, who started the season off with the Mets and are ending it in the ironically against each other in the AL in the ALCS. So kind of one of those little funny tidbits about what's going on. But yeah, and has anybody had more success in hitting leadoff than the the I'm trying. Why did I blank on him? Texas is the leadoff hitter. Shoot. Mm, oh
I think it's
darn.
Marcus Simeon, right?
Yes, Simeon, right. And he's backed. Number two is Corey Seager's batting second. Simeon has driven in 100 runs. How do you drive in 100 runs if you're the leadoff hitter? I mean, that shows you that there are guys finding ways to get on bases.
It makes you wonder what the Athletics were thinking when they traded all
Oh,
these
we know
guys.
what the Athletics were thinking. Get rid of Simeon, and because he's going to want money.
Get rid of all the good
S-
players.
yeah, it was the same reason they made that trade, which wasn't a great trade, that sent Olsen to the Braves. It's
Yeah,
like,
and even Chapman's been killing it on the
oh
Blue
yeah,
Jays.
yeah, I
He's
forgot
he's been
him.
like a big glue piece for them.
Yeah,
So
I forgot about him. Yeah,
they're everywhere.
there's.
Every team's got one of these ex Athletics
It's
hanging around.
funny. When was it? Maybe a couple, 2, 3 years ago. I was talking to Matt Vescursion, who is on the MLB Network and also does national games for Fox and for others. And Vescursion is from the San Francisco Bay Area, and growing up, he was a big fan of the Athletics. And I said to him, Matt, this is a young team at the time. I said, is there anybody? And he didn't let me finish the question. He said, Marcus Simeon. And I said, so before we even asked the question, before I finished asking the question, you're telling me Marcus Simeon is the best player, on the field. And he goes, he's a star. He is an absolute 100% star. And I'm like, okay. And he's right. He was 100% right. It wasn't for his team, but it was for Texas. And you know, good on Simeon. And I'll do my best to remember his name next time. But and then they got Corey Seager. We talked about teams who have spent money off and not be in the playoffs. We would be less than genuine if we didn't mention that Texas did spend a lot of money, and so they're not the largest spending team, but they're not a team that's cheaped out on people either. As is Houston. I mean, Houston also not a team that cheaped out, but or the Phillies for that matter. The Phillies have $600 million tied up in two players. So there's definitely money that's been spent, but it's not the money on the teams that won the most games. So there you go. And then you've got teams like Arizona, and they're not overwhelmingly. They don't have a big payroll, and so from that standpoint, they got there. So good on them. Doesn't matter how you get there, just get there. Foxy has a question for you. What were you thinking, buddy? The ba- Why would you even think about betting on the Chicago Bears?
Buying high on the Bears after Thursday night win, big mistake. The Vikings was the smash spot of the week for sure.
Oh, but I mean, why would you even think? Did he fade them, or did he? I can't read that.
He
Did
took
he?
he teased it up to plus 5.5.
Ah,
They ended up losing by 6 points. I guess the reasoning was, the Bears at home, extra rest off that Thursday night win, and obviously divisional game. The Vikings haven't been good, but the Vikings are a much better team. They were missing Justin Jefferson, but sometimes you just got to go with the better team.
Foxy, let me just give you a clue here, buddy. Okay, don't bet on a game where the Bears are involved, or just don't ever bet on the Bears. Okay, for any reason,
To
because
be
they will
fair,
they will disappoint you.
to,
Okay,
to
go
be
ahead.
fair to him,
To Foxy. Yes.
Fields did get injured during the game, and they had to
True.
throw in Bajent, who was a rookie, and
Mm-hmm.
I believe he's a rookie from the Division II level. They said
Right.
I think he played at Shepherd University. It was
I wouldn't even you could hold a gun to my head, Amadeus, and say he went to Shepherd, and I would not know where Shepherd is. I have
I did.
no
Yeah,
clue.
I'm with you, Jim. I didn't even know Shepherd was a university. I'm sure there's probably multiple in the United States, but yeah, definitely not one I've heard of. And that's all I remember about him because I was confused when the commentators started talking about how Bayesian was a rookie. I was wondering. I said, so they drafted him this year. For
With
number
a
one, where did he come from?
right.
Number two, why is a rookie quarterback your backup? And a rookie from the second division of all things. That's your
Well,
backup QB for when you're like what second, third year starter gets injured.
okay. Let's see. Shepherd is in West Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and
Maybe I'll visit them on my trip in a few weeks.
yeah, exactly.
Go scout the
Here's
next NFL quarterback.
exactly helpful. They play in the Pen League. They started off this season with a win 27-26 over Southern Connecticut State. Um, they then went and beat Edinburgh, which is not to be confused with the Scottish University. It's Edinburgh in Pennsylvania. They then beat California of Pennsylvania 44-34. Kutztown on Family Day, they lost. Number one rule, don't ever, bring in a good team when you're playing, in your basically your homecoming. It's not a good idea.
Could have used Bajan for that one.
Could have had him back. Yeah. They beat Shippensburg. So yeah, these are all the schools in the in that PSAC league in Pennsylvania. They still have East Stroudsburg State to go, Bloomsburg, Westchester, which is their homecoming, and then Mercy Crest Military Academy, which is the game that's their deal. So that's where it is. It's Shepherd's is in Shepherd's University. I mean, sorry, in West Virginia. So
And every school in their conference is apparently either in the UK or some form of Eastern blank state, Southern blank state.
the what we like to call in the business the directional schools. Pointing in subdirection. I thought the weather would come into play. Just for the record, Foxy, just to help you out here, buddy. It gets colder in Minnesota than it does in Chicago. So Minnesota wouldn't have necessarily been that bad.
They also play
So,
in a dome though, so they're a fake
well, they
North
do,
team
they
game
do,
up in Minnesota.
they do, but they do practice. They have a practice dome inside, like most NFL teams do, but they are certainly not a bad team. Outside But look, I see what you're saying. If you thought it was going to be sloppy, anything can happen, and certainly with a quarterback like Justin Fields, who is a running quarterback, usually when it's a sloppy mess, the quarterbacks that can have escapability do help. That does help. So my guess is that I could see your logic, Foxy. Let me just put it that way. Now, a couple of quick things about Shepherds, in that. It depending upon there are some guys who like to go from a D1 to a D2 school, and in that, and they kind of fly under the radar. Probably the most successful one of recent years would have been Joe Flacco. Flacco came from Delaware, but Flacco was at Pitt. He got beat out at quarterback, he decided he did not want. And there was, remember, at that point there was no portal, so he decided he wanted to go and play. Um, and you would have to wait out a year. That was what the old rule was. So, but if you dropped down a level to D2, you could play. So Flacco dropped down. So it wasn't like so the scouts knew Flacco. So when they saw him, they knew that. Okay, so he was good from that standpoint. So it's not that. And by the way, also most of the D2 guys are that make the league, and there are a lot that do, are usually unsigned free agents, and most of them are linemen.
Agent was an unsigned free agent as well.
Was he? Okay.
So he actually wasn't drafted. I might have said that earlier, but that was
Yeah.
my mistake. When I heard he was a rookie, I said I knew he was in his first season, so my thought process was, why are we drafting uh like this rookie out of
Shepherdsville.
Division 2 and making him the backup quarterback?
All of that is legitimate, legitimate concern. I would have the interesting part. What doesn't surprise me about it is that the lack of spending by Chicago just continues. Going all the way back, tracking all the way back to Papa George Hallis, who was the original. His family still owns it. I think it's his daughters. But yeah, they own the team, and they have yet, they haven't really dove into spending a great deal of cash ever on players. And so the fact that they wouldn't have gone out and found a legit second quarterback does not surprise me in any way. Any thoughts that we saw that Tannehill got hurt for Tennessee. Um, Malik, the kid out of Liberty, is their number two. He's the backup quarterback. He's the kid they drafted. Um, any thoughts that you were talking about the Bucks making a deal at the trade deadline for a running back. Any thought that maybe a second string quarterback that's now on somebody's team, or for that matter, even a first team quarterback from some of these other non-contending teams, might end up in Tennessee?
Yeah, it really depends. They've had a wacky season. They haven't
Hmm.
been able to win a game on the road. So I guess we'll have to see if they view themselves as a threat in that
Uh,
division. Because right now, the Texans are looking good, the Colts are looking good,
yeah,
and
Jacksonville.
obviously the Jags are the faves. So and all of a sudden they've won. They're getting on a winning streak again. So yeah, this might be one of those situations where maybe the Titans view them like we gotta start shedding some thing here, and maybe the Derrick Henry trade comes out of that. But then if Derrick Henry goes, I would think the good old journeyman DeAndre Hopkins is out of there too.
Right, right. Well, I mean, look, the um, the situation in a case like that, you're the reason we don't see that many trades at the deadline is because to get somebody in there who's going to help you, over the last few games of the season, it's most of the time you see it's defense. It's like maybe they'll grab a linebacker or they'll grab a defensive back. Um, it's seldom is it a a seldom is it an impact player on offense. So I agree with you on quarterback. If you're going to do that, you're going to say, well, you know what, we probably could do better if we just we don't need the draft choices or whatever you're going to give me. We will just grab a quarterback in the draft, and I think that I agree with you. They're not. They don't look like Tennessee doesn't look like they're going to be buyers at the deadline. They might be sellers. Um, and I don't know. Other than I mean, they got Derrick Henry. That could get them enough draft choices to make a difference.
Same with DeAndre Hopkins.
True, true.
There
If they
is
did both of
talent there.
them, if they did both of them, they would have. They might have more draft picks than anybody in
Well,
the
I think if you
draft.
trade one, you have to trade the other, just
Hmm.
because if you're not going to trade DeAndre Hopkins first,
Right.
That would make no sense. You
Right.
just picked him up this year. So if you trade Derrick Henry,
Mm-hmm.
then yeah, your run game's gone.
Right.
You're going to become one dimensional. You're going to have no passing game with the quarterbacks you have. DeAndre
Mm-hmm.
Hopkins is not going to be happy. He didn't want
Mm-hmm.
to stay in Arizona. He's
Right.
not going to want to stay in Tennessee. So
Right.
I'm making the prediction where you can't trade DeAndre Hopkins first. It makes no sense. But if Derrick Henry does get traded, then Hopkins is out the door because he won't want to stay on the team at that point.
Well, let's go back in time. Take our little Wayback Machine and go back. The single most important move that Jimmy Johnson made at one point almost, you know, got Jerry Jones to fire him before, before he ever got started, um, was talking Jerry into trading Herschel Walker to Minnesota. The Herschel Walker trade to Minnesota netted them three guys. It netted them Troy Aikman. It netted them um, netted them Emmitt Smith and also the wide receiver from Miami, University of Miami. Why? Jeez, this is a bad day for me. I can't remember the guy's name. Wide receiver Michael Irvin. That's who it was. So they get Aikman, Irvin, and Emmitt Smith, all three Hall of Famers, all because Jimmy was willing to trade, uh, the quote unquote only star that Dallas had at the time uh, for draft picks. So if Tennessee is willing to do it, and a team that's willing to send you a a buku of draft choices, you can turn those draft choices into a team if you have that many of them, because you can afford to miss on one or two. You Otherwise you can't. So I would agree with you. I would think that if you were to trade those two star players, you could get a bounty back in draft choices.
Might be rebuilding time in Tennessee.
Well, if you trade those two guys, it is that whether you want to admit it or not, it is rebuilding time in Tennessee.
Well, that's the thing,
Uh,
right? Like since the season where they were the number one seed, they really
right,
haven't done anything, and now
right.
they're struggling. They're going to struggle in this division this year. So
Mm-hmm.
it might just be time to rebuild.
100%. I mean, that's the very definition of it. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Um,
I
go out
wouldn't
there.
fire Mike Vrabel though. I still think
No, no, no,
he's a
no. It's not his
great
fault.
coach.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it's not his fault. You
he's
know,
done wonders considering the team he's had with Tannehill leading the offense there. He
if
has done
somebody would have told
wonders over
me
the
that
year
they would have made the playoffs with Ryan Tannehill, I'd have laughed.
as a
It's
number
just
one
like,
seed in the AFC.
right. It's like you gotta be kidding me. But Tannehill surprised everybody. Played well. Didn't get himself into trouble. Then you got Derrick Henry, who's he's offense. You know, all you need for you don't need to pass that often if you got Derrick Henry.
And
Uh,
that's the other thing with Derrick Henry, right? Like he knows he carries that team,
yeah,
and at some point he obviously he had that injury a few years ago. He's getting older. At some point, he's got to start thinking, "I want to be on a contender."
right. I want a ring. Send me somewhere. The only thing, and I don't know this, and I will look it up so we can have it tomorrow. Um, I don't know if that would put him in cap hell. I don't think it would, but we'd have to check that out from their standpoint. That would be the only thing that would hold him up. Although um, I don't think Henry has that much time on his contract left. Um, and Hopkins, I don't know if they, I don't know. I think Hopkins came over. Um, I don't think he's got a long contract either. So maybe that might benefit them. We'll have to take a look and see. But definitely, it would be getting rid of those two guys would bring you back a bounty of very solid draft choices, which you could rebuild a team pretty quick if you get that if you can make all the right moves in the draft from that standpoint. So we'll see, but it'll be interesting. Uh, Definitely interesting to see how that plays out. Let's see. Any soccer this week that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, there's some international going on right now. Tomorrow's the last day, and then the regular domestic leagues will be back for the weekend.
So all will be back as planned come Monday, then, or I'm sorry, Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
So there you go. Something to look forward to there, guys. We got a week to go to get there, but it'll be there. Keep a lookout, by the way, for the NHL and the NBA. They are underway, and way too early to talk about that kind of stuff. Because on a day-to-day basis, if that's where you're going, I don't think that that's going to be too much of an issue. Foxy says boring Euro qualifiers only. World Cup qualifiers in South America are worth watching. Normally, they always are, Foxy. Um,
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the matchup. Netherlands France
yeah.
wasn't bad. I mean, France blew them out, but
Mhm.
I mean it was 2-1, but still France was dominating that match. But yeah, it
Well,
depends on the match you watch.
if South America, and I'm going to get your expert opinion on this. The South American teams play with a lot of flair. They're not really defensive minded, so you're going to see some scores. They're going to put some goals up. But I think stylistically, I think is the best way of putting it. I would say that watching South American soccer is a little more entertaining necessarily than Euro soccer, but it may just be a point of personal preference.
Yeah, you definitely get a lot more wacky bounces. They're not afraid to shoot in South
No.
America, so it leads to like interesting rebounds and things like that. Because normally, in Europe, they wouldn't even take that shot with all the bodies, not even try to get the ball through. But in South America, there's more space. You're
Hmm.
right. They don't defend the same way. They don't tighten up the box, and it leads to more
Right.
space. It leads to more awkward shots from far out, and then yeah, there's just get some wacky bounces at the ball sometimes.
Well, and you also get some, what in essence, is a fast break. You screw up on making trying to score, and then all of a sudden, if you're not playing defense, they're on their way back there, and they got numbers, and you're wondering what the hell just happened, and that's what's going on. Venezuela, best chance to make World Cup. That's interesting. I really didn't. I really didn't peg Venezuela as one of those teams, but you're there, so I'm deferring to you, Foxy. In that case, that's Have you been on Venezuela?
No, I haven't watched too many of their matches.
Mm, I I don't I really don't know much about them, but I trust you, Foxy. I don't trust you with the Chicago Bears, but I definitely trust you with Venezuela in that regard. That's definitely it. All right, bud. You've got some stuff I think people want to see.
Yeah, make sure you check out my premium plays at bigal.com, pickadvisor.com, and theinsidersroom.com. I got one up for Monday Night Football tonight. I also have a baseball play up that you can go get, and I'll have tons of soccer and football moving forward. Obviously, basketball soon, the college
Hmm.
and NBA. So we'll be getting into that, and yeah, go check that out.
All right. Get there right after the show. It's in the show box below. And go and invest wisely with Amadeus. All right. Okay, gang. Thanks for joining us. We had a fun show just reflecting back on the weekend. There'll be a couple baseball games to talk about tomorrow and a football game. So we got plenty of things to chat about tomorrow. So enjoy yourself. May all of your bets be winners, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.